today, the CEO show, I wanted to talk to a good friend of mine. We've been knowing each other for a couple years now, and I see that we see things almost the same way as it relates to honor and code. And he was a CEO in the street, also a CEO now. I would consider a guy that, stands on his dean 100%. And, we've been watching the Griselda Blanco Netflix series. And, first of all, I wanted to make sure everyone knows your name, so I want you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jorge Valdez.
Jorge Valdez. And he's a guy that actually was active at that time. You can see him on Netflix, Cocaine Cowboys, the two dudes that had the speedboats. He was their plug, and he passed the plug. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little more, just to get everyone caught up. But again, very like-minded, boss-minded individual. I just wanted to just kick it with him and talk to him. So thanks for coming up here. I appreciate you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So just so people have context that don't know who you are, you want to tell them who you are, a little bit of the history of yourself? And I'm just going to ask you to tell the story, because when you tell me the stories, any story I have, your stories trump those stories. You know what I mean? Because you just talk to the people that we kind of culturally glorify, but you actually used to hustle with them.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, if it was up to me, I would have just continued to be in the oblivion. The group that I became part of, and I'll go back, I was a nerd, a young kid.
What year is this?
So I came from Cuba in '66 at the age of 10. I was 10 years old. And my mother got left behind. We were one of the richest families in Cuba. Came to the United States to 11 of us live in a one-bedroom apartment in Little Havana. And literally writing down one time we were going to take a piss, because it was 11 of us going to work school with one bathroom. And, we came from Cuba because my mom was very, very religious. She's like, communism's stupid, God is everything. So God was everything for her. Well, when we came to the United States, she was left behind. And we literally came from being multimillionaires to going hungry. I mean, I would have 2 raw eggs in the morning with a powdered milk and no lunch. Until dinner time, we have rice and beans.
So all the money stayed in Cuba?
All the money was left behind. My dad came to clean toilets for Jackson Byron.
We went from being a millionaire to going to clean toilets?
For 85 cents an hour.
Wow.
And the interesting thing about it is the principle my father taught me. He never complained about it. I complained. I was like, I was pissed. And he never, ever showed any emotion. All he would say to us forever and ever, and it came to be a big part of my life at one time, he was like, son, in life, you got no control whether you're rich or poor. And I'm like, no shit. Whether you're healthy or sick, dead or alive, the only thing you have control in life is your word. And he was like a broken record, Dame, over and over again. And but that became so ingrained in me that to jump ahead, and I'll come back again, at the age of 23, I laid in the floor of a Panamanian jail being literally tortured to death.
By Noriega?
By Noriega.
Not the rapper, the real Noriega.
Yeah, the real Noriega. Yeah.
Okay.
And he betrayed us because he worked for the cartel. And, I bled for 5 years every time I took a piss. I passed blood. But I rather at that moment in time, this is why series like Griselda irked me or pissed me off, because I rather at that point in time die. I had just turned 23. This was April 5th, and I turned 23 February 28th. And I said to myself, I'm going to die in this son of a bitch before my children or my family has to ever bow their heads in front of any human being because of I decided to become a rat to save my life.
Well, I think you should give a little context, because he tortured you for a while. And
28 days.
So let's get to that. Let's just cut to this. So Noriega got you in the jail.
Yeah.
And he's torturing you. Just tell me what happened there, and then we can get back to the beginning, because we went there.
So what happened is we crashed in Panama. And when we crashed...
A plane crash?
A plane crash.
Okay.
We shouldn't have even lived. We should have blown up.
So you were in a plane crash.
Yeah, we had 200 and some odd kilos of cocaine inside. This is 1979.
And you crashed.
And we crashed. We went down at 5,000 feet because both alternators on the plane went out, and we had a bladder inside the airplane to give us range because the airplane came from Bolivia. So I was on my way to Nicaragua because I was business partner with General Somoza, the president of Nicaragua. And when we crashed, the pilot said, hey, let's blow this plane with a flare gun. And I'm like, bullshit. $7 million inside the plane. He said, yeah, but if we get busted. I said, I don't give a damn. I'll get us out of here. I had just gotten the president of Costa Rica elected. Paid him $1 million to get him elected. And I had tremendous power in Latin America. Well, lo and behold, what ended up happening is the Attorney General came to see me. And when the Attorney General came to see me, I said, look.
Wait, so the plane crashes.
We crashed.
They come and save you or whatever. And
we saved us.
Then they find the work.
Yeah, then they find the dope. And we were at a hotel, right? And we came back to the police station to get our passports, and they arrested us. Because when they called Panama City and they gave my name, apparently, according to them, I was the most wanted drug dealer in the world at that time. This is 1979. So the Attorney General comes, and I'm like, look, how much money to get out and how much money to buy the coke back? He's like, Noriega just sold the coke, but $250,000 for you to get out. So we had contingency plans, right? I had people in different parts of the world where they could get me out within 2 days with money. So I'm like, dial this number and give this code, and you'll have the money in 2 days. So he comes, he gets the money. He's like, all right, we're going to take you to Panama City, and we're going to rough you up a little bit to make it look good for the DEA. But stick to your story that you had no idea what was inside that airplane. So they take us to Panama City. They line us up in a conference room against the wall, 4 of us, 2 pilots, their boss, and me. And nothing in the room. Probably the room about 15 feet by 20 feet wide, 4 chairs in the back, and they bring this little kid. Damn, this kid must have been 18, 20 years old, maybe 95 pounds soaking wet, naked, handcuffed to his feet, handcuffed to his hands. They slammed him in the floor, and they stuck a broomstick up his ass.
Oh, man.
And blood just splattered all over the place.
Oh, man.
They looked at us and said, we only caught him with 20 pounds of pot. And we had 300 kilos of cocaine. The pilots, 2 big old Georgia boys, broke weak. And they're like, hey, look, here's the deal. Not only George, the biggest drug dealer in America, he just bribed the Attorney General.
They started telling that to you?
No, they told that
on
to
you?
On us, in front of us.
You started telling on you?
Yeah, quick.
So he saw the kid get violated.
Oh, he passed out. There was blood all over the place. They dragged him out.
Just started pointing at you.
The pilots are like,
Got it.
hey,
Damn.
we don't want no part of this.
Right.
They didn't give a damn. So they took him apart. They took him away, and they took me and their boss, who was a really stand-up guy. I mean, a hell of a guy, Harold Rosenthal. I mean, when Martin Luther King was in jail in Atlanta, Bobby Kennedy called this guy, who was a bondsman, to get him out. Hell of a man. Anyway, they took us to a dungeon, and that's the mistake they made. They kept him and I together. So we fed off each other. He had been an old revolutionary. You know, I was just a kid. I was 23 years old. And they began to just torture us day and night. They come and beat you till you pass out. And then when you pass out, when you wake up again, they beat you again.
What were they asking you? What were they asking you?
They were asking us, who do you work for? And I mean, Noriega knew because he worked for us.
Right.
But they wanted us, the DEA was actually ordering the tortures. They wanted us to say who were our buyers in the United States, you know, our whole infrastructure. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I was just going for a ride in that airplane. And
and you're like, I just paid $250 to somebody. Why am I going through this?
Well, I think when they told the Attorney General, the only guy that could get me out, now he's on the run himself.
Oh, man.
So they came in, I mean, one time and they had a handcuff to our feet. They had a handcuff to the bars for hours standing up in the floor, no food for 20 some odd days. Water will come from a dirty spigot, and you try to pass out underneath the spigot so when they open the water, you can drink some. No bathroom, no nothing. And one time.
Rats?
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, there was this rat I called Mickey, and I kept looking at somebody. I said, Mickey, if they don't get me out of here pretty soon, I'm going to eat you. Because, I mean, it's like, we had nothing, man. We had no food or nothing.
So you're like starving.
Oh, my God. And then they, one time, they came with a can of gasoline and just threw it all over us. And then the guy took a cattle prod, you know the cattle prod, and just applied it to my testicles. And I'm telling you, Dane.
With gasoline?
Yeah. Listen, I was tortured a lot in many, many different ways you can imagine, but never in my life I felt pain like that. I mean, your body jumps off the floor and somewhere midair you pass out.
God damn.
And in my fear, the thing about it, after a while, the pain goes away, right? The beatings don't hurt no more. What hurts after a while is your mind starts working on you. And I'm like, we're going to lose our mind in this son of a bitch.
You were telling somebody was banging their head?
Yeah, and I saw a guy in a bar across from me banging his head and licking the bars, and he had only been there 6 months. And I'm like, I don't want to be a burden to my family. I'd rather just go ahead and die here. And we made up our mind to die. So when they came to beat us up, before they came in the cell, I said, hey, I have a message for Noriega. Tell him that if he don't kill me when I get out of here, he knows I got the power to get him. We're going to get his family, and we're going to cut him in pieces right in front of him, and then kill him. Now, we knew that would make the son of a bitch kill us, right? I mean, you're threatening his family. This guy's a freaking animal, right? He comes, 2 days later, he comes laughing. Noriega. He looked at me like, why are you threatening me? I didn't put you there, and you paid the wrong guy. I'm like, how much you want? He said, same thing, $250. I said, I paid $250 for 4. We're only 2 now. He said, $250. I gave him the same drill. 3 days later, they came and they put us up against a wall with a fire hydrant, washed all the blood and all the filth off of us. I mean, that was painful. And getting hit with a fire hose. Yeah. And then they took us to the airport, and we were going to go to Costa Rica. He even got us the ticket to Costa Rica. And we're at the airport, and all of a sudden, I mean, they let us in there. The police took us to the airport and left. But like 5 minutes later, Interpol came, like 20 agents. Jorge Valdez. I'm like, I don't know who the hell he is.
So you thought you were free, and then all of a sudden...
I thought I'm going to Costa Rica,
and now you're going
to be with my friend who had just got elected president.
After being tortured for 21 days.
Yeah, and
they picked you up, Interpol picked you up.
They took us and threw us like a sack of potatoes on an airplane. Said, you're not going to Costa Rica, you're going to Miami. I got to Miami, and I was charged with heading the largest drug conspiracy in the world. I was given the highest bond in history at that time, $7 million. When a bond was, this is 1979, when a bond is 50, 100,000. They then reduced it to $2 million, told my attorney, tell him when he posted, we'll take the $2 million and put him back in jail and raise the bond. So I couldn't get out no matter what. I had the best attorneys in the world. Spent $1 million in attorney in 1979. And so that was the Panama experience. But going back.
And then from then they gave you.
Then I went to trial in Macon, Georgia. I'd never been there in my life. They made up a case and gave me 15 years, which at that time was the highest, case in the federal system. And 1979, I went in for 5 years. I had a blast. In the can.
So you had to do 5 out to 15?
Yeah, because back then, the old law was that if you had not had any criminal past, I mean, I didn't have a traffic ticket, man. I had worked for the federal government for 4 years. All I ever did in my life was go to school full-time at University of Miami and work full-time. And so, I went to prison, had a blast. But going back,
I mean, compared to being in Noriega's world.
Yeah, and then I ran into Noriega in prison.
You ran into him in prison?
Yeah.
What was that like?
So they had him in a cage, actually about like half of this studio, and bars, and it was a cage. It was a cage right there in the yard at the Federal Correctional Institute in Miami. I walked, and he was in there because he turned himself in as a prisoner of war, right? That was the only smart thing this stupid idiot did. He turned himself in with his military uniform. So I walked up to the bar. He had like a queen-size bed, had a treadmill, big TV.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
He had a treadmill in his cell?
Yeah. And I looked at him, and I'm like, hey, General, you don't look that tough with the monkey outfit you got on. He didn't even acknowledge me.
You think he remembered you?
I don't know. I would imagine, because we were the biggest case ever in Panama history. So
let's rewind to how we got to that point.
So what ended up happening is, like I said, I worked really, really hard because, I remember one day coming home and I wanted a sandwich for lunch in school so bad. To me, it looked like a Wagyu steak. A friend of mine had a sandwich. And I asked my friend, hey, how do you get that sandwich? He said, well, we get food stamps. Like, what the hell is that? He's like, oh, man, government gives you the stamps and you go buy food. And man, I thought I discovered the America. I couldn't wait to get home, see my dad. My dad come from work. I said, hey, Dad, I've been telling you about my friend. He has a sandwich. And my dad, was one, that old mentality, kids were meant to be seen, not to be heard, and didn't talk much. And I said, do you know about, he said he gets this food stamps, Dad. I said, you know about that? He said, yeah. I said, why don't we get food stamps, Dad? He's like, son, because that's for poor people. I'm like, holy shit, you mean we're not even poor yet? We got to work our way up to poverty? He's like, no, we ain't poor. We just ain't got no money. That's how he thought. He said, you get up early, work hard, and help feed your family. I was 10. Probably weighed 70 pounds. And I did. I've been getting up at 5:30 in the morning ever since, all my life, even now that I'm retired. And so my whole deal was, I'm going to graduate early. At the age of 17, I became the youngest employee in the Federal Reserve Bank. And I'm going to graduate early, take a year off, save money, because there was no student loan back then, which, thank God, that's a good thing, because I think that's what created the modern slavery today. And I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to be a millionaire by the age of 30. Damn. I didn't do no alcohol. I never smoked a cigarette in my life. I never smoked pot. I never done drugs. I never done nothing in my life. I couldn't tell you back then the difference between cocaine and sugar. And so I did that. And when I'm about to graduate, my accounting professor, he was a partner of Price and Waterhouse in Michigan, came to Miami, did not speak Spanish, and he's like, hey, you want to come work for me? I'm like, what do you mean? I thought I was really going to have a hell of a future at the Federal Reserve Bank. And he's like, yeah, if you do my Spanish clients, I'll give you a secretary, an office, copy machine, the whole deal. Start your own practice. My dad was very conservative. No, son, you have a great job, you prestige it, all of that. And my mom is like, you're never going to get nowhere working for somebody. She said, give it a shot. If it fails, you're smart enough, you'll get another job. But if you don't take risk in life, son, you'll never be nobody. And my mom was everything. So I did. So the first client was a little grocery store in Miami, those little strip joints, not strip, a strip bar,
strip mall.
A little strip mall. And I walked in there, Dave. This is 1976, August, something like that. I walk in there and I'm like, I see $180, $150, something like that. And I'm like, damn, how did a little grocery store make so much money? I was so naive, I couldn't even imagine what they were doing. They were paying me $1,000 a month to come in 2 to 3 hours every Monday of the month for 4 days. So I'm like, wow, 12 hours. At that time, I was making like $5, and I think minimum wage was like $1.80. So I was like making a lot at the Federal Reserve Bank. I thought I hit a jackpot. I thought I'm on my way to real wealth here. Went by $1,000. Second week, another $85. Now I'm starting getting suspicious. The third week, when I deposited 300 grand in the bank, I'm like, I called them up. I'm like, I need to ask you something. So I grabbed this dusty can of Campbell's soups. I'll never forget. I said, you see this soup? It cost $1. And if we sell it for $3, we make $2 profit. The problem we have here is that I've deposited over $300,000 in 3 weeks, and we haven't bought shit. Where's this money coming from? Man, they looked at me, started laughing. Oh, this is nothing. We're drug dealers.
Just flat out.
And here I am, this nerd kid, straight as a whistle. I ain't cutting no corners. I'm not crossing no lines. I don't go to parties where people smoke reefer. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm working for the government. I'm focused, man. I'm like laser. And they're like, hey, we know you work for the government. You know how to open foreign bank accounts? And I said, yeah. I worked for Federal Reserve Bank, and I knew that back then they were like $850 in the Cayman. Well, how much? I just said $10,000. Like nothing, because I was like, I'm not interested. And they're like, we won three of them. And I'm like, damn, I'm on my way now, buddy.
In the 70s.
76. I'm 20 years old. Then, a couple months passed by. They introduced me to the main guy, a guy that nobody's ever seen. He's going to be seen in my documentary. 95 years old today.
Right now he's alive?
He's alive today.
Oh, wow.
And he's the founder of the group that became known as the Medellin Drug Cartel. Now, let me tell you this. I haven't said this publicly, but there was no such thing as a Medellin Drug Cartel. That's all bullshit. Medellin Drug Cartel was a name. The closest thing to the Medellin Drug Cartel was us at the beginning. I'll tell you how that happened. But that was a name that the gringos gave to 4 groups, big organization in Medellin, because in life, if you can create one common enemy, then you got a target, right? But recently, a few years ago, I found an article where Jorge Ochoa, one of those 4 members of what Americans call the Medellin Cartel, said same thing I said. There was nothing. Everybody had their own organization. They had their own planes, their own accountant, their own lawyer, their own hitman, their own distribution. And yeah, every once in a while, you know, I work with Pablo. I let Pablo come in my routes.
Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, Pablo Escobar and all that. But
So wait. Can't just say I worked with Pablo and just breeze through that. So what do you mean you worked with Pablo?
okay, so this is 97. So this group, Manuel Garces and 3 other gentlemen, were the original founders of what became the Medellin Drug Cartel. They were the most powerful people in all of Colombia, all of Medellin. When Pablo Escobar didn't even exist back then. He was still stealing tombstones. Okay? So for one thing so I can bring you into contact with these people, so they asked me to open a shipping company for them. They wanted to bring in bananas, which later on I found out was bullshit. They wanted to bring in cocaine. We bought a ship and all that. And I mean, we ended up having a lot of companies. We had an airline company. We had construction companies. We had my godfather, Manuel, who I call, he owned the largest emerald mines in Colombia, the largest coal mine in Colombia. One of the richest men, or if not the richest man in Colombia. So when in 1977, beginning of 77, they're like, I go to a meeting in Medellin to tell them how the whole remodeling of the ship is coming. And he's like, I want you to handle all my operations in the United States. And I'm like, what does it mean? He says, everything. All my distribution, everything. He said, you're young, you're smart. And he says this in the documentary. We interviewed him for my future documentary. He's like, I just felt I could make you my right-hand man. And I'm like, dude, at this time I'm handling all their money, right? I'm opening foreign bank accounts all over the world. I'm friends with ministers of finance, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, Grand Cayman, Tortola.
And you're doing all this from Miami?
Oh, from Miami. I'm flying all over the world. I just turned 21. I said, Manuel.
So at 21, the plug in Colombia says, I want to give you all of my operations in
the
America.
U.S. And at that time, they weren't doing what we ended up creating.
Right.
But I looked at them, I'm like, I don't even know the difference between cocaine and sand and cotton and sugar. He's like, you'll figure it out. He said, by the way, there's a load coming in 8 days. Who the frick I sell this shit to? How do I get it? Where do I store it? How do I transport it? What do I do? Well, within 6 months, I became U.S. head of all operations. And I was making, at that time, between $1 million and $3 million a month in 1977. And we're bringing in anywhere between 600 and 800 kilos a month right through Miami International Airport. So when I see, hey, I watch them all. I watched Narcos, the first one.
Well, you were telling me how Pablo used to work for you.
So then, yeah, at that time, Pablo didn't even exist. He was still stealing tombstones in Colombia. So he started, the way Pablo got started, and here's another thing, contrary to a lot of people's belief. Pablo was not the richest. Pablo was not the most powerful man in Colombia. He was the most violent. No doubt. He had no scruples. He didn't give a shit about anybody. He loved his family. I'll tell you that much. But the way Pablo started was, see, Colombia did not produce any cocaine in the 70s.
Right.
All the cocaine that came in a base form was from Bolivia.
That's why
And
narcos.
from Peru and Bolivia, and then it would be crystallized in Colombia. You know, so Pablo started going to Peru and bringing it over to Colombia for different people, from my godfather and others that
So
were involved.
he was going to pick it up for them and bring
Yeah,
it.
and then he started to send coke in people's routes. Right, there was different people started to bring in. And then he started to get power. And then he would go to you and say, Dame, I want your route. And you give it to me, I'm going to kill you. Didn't give a shit about anybody.
So that's how he used to work for you? He used to do the route for y'all?
So in reality, he never did any route. What ended up happening is when we started to have our own, when he came later on, because we started in 1977. Okay, so let's go back. I started in 77 to 1980. In 79, I get arrested. I'm still running operations until I go to trial and make it in 80. That's why when you see in Cocaine Cowboys, and the prosecutor says, there's two ways to get rich in life. You work hard or you get lucky. Sal and Willie got lucky that Jorge Valdez got arrested and handed him the keys to the kingdom.
Right.
Right? So I gave him the whole operation, and they became very, very big. I didn't even know Pablo at that time. Never even heard of him in my life. Never heard of anybody but this original group. So I go to prison till 85, and then in that period, 82, 83, 84, Pablo became very, very powerful. I got out in 85, 84 I got out, after 5 years, and when I get out, I go back just as powerful as ever before. And because some of the people at that time, a lot of people knew that I got tortured, never ratted anybody, and when I came out, it was like, hey, and I still had all my clients in California, which is where I used to sell most of my stuff, California and New York. So that's when I started working with Pablo in 85, because when we had our own routes. So I went to Pablo. So let's say I'm bringing in 600 kilos. I went to Pablo and Gacha, which were the two most powerful men in Colombia now in 1985, right?
So you get out of jail, you get back to work, you go to Colombia?
In 85. I didn't go to Colombia. I didn't have to. Just kept working with them.
Right.
Right. So anyway, so here I am with them. So I had routes again. You know, I brought in from 85 to 87 when I finally walked away, I brought in 38 loads, you know, 40 loads. Well, I would go to Pablo, you're Pablo, and I'm like, hey, I have a load, I have a route, I'm going to bring in 600
Or would you
kilos.
like call him or meet him in Miami?
Call him, we had salary. No, he never came. This whole bullshit that he came to Washington and that picture of him in front of the White House, that's all BS.
That's doctored?
That's all doctor, that's all baloney. He never came here. He was the most wanted man. By that time, he had killed the Attorney General in Colombia and became the most wanted man in Colombia. He's living out in the jungles. So we were always communicating through satellite and through different people that he had in the United States, in Miami.
But like, who introduced you to him? Like, how did you get
My godfather.
Okay, got it.
So my godfather said, okay, we're gonna bring 600 keys. So you and I bring in 300, and let's go to Pablo and say, you want 150? And go to Gacha, you want 150? And they're like, hell yeah. And people would come to me and say, why would you give him a chance? He don't take none of your coke in his routes. I'm like, you see, in life, I always believe in win-win. Everything I've ever done in my life that's brought me great success is because if I deal with you, and my mindset is, if you win, you're always going to be my cheerleader and never going to be my adversary. Later on, I found out Pablo turned in over 45 loads to the DEA of his competitors, man. He was snitching to the DEA thinking that they were going to cut him some slack later on.
Like, he was feeding them so they
Right.
would leave him
So-
alone.
With me, he was,
So you let him run some stuff through your routes?
yeah. And the same thing with Gacha. Now, Gacha, you know, known as the Mexican, he was the most powerful man in Colombia. And there was 3 other guys that were wealthier than Pablo, but see, their mindset was different. Hey, let him take all the publicity. We just care about the money.
So let me ask you this. Once you know that you now have this, when they first tell you that you got America, how did you put together an infrastructure And how did you get a crew? Did you have to get a crew together? Like, what was that like?
Well, I have one principle. I'm not going to work with anyone that I have not grown up with. Okay? And I'm going to do another thing. One of my guys is only going to know 2 other people. And that's it. I'm going to cut if something happens. Remember now, I already got ratted on. So now I'm thinking proactively, how do I eliminate all this risk?
Well, I'm talking about that initial, when you first got the
Yeah,
plug.
when I first started, then I just started bringing in people that I work with. Now,
Did you have to have a crew? Did you have, like, you know, like you watch Griselda, she had to get a crew of killers, and you know, you had all this infrastructure. Like all of a sudden, you went from being like damn near square to saying now I'm going to be a cartel boss. Like,
the thing about it,
well, how's your mentality?
in that
Like,
period, 1976,
wasn't like
I'm going to
that.
run it like a business.
Right.
See, Netflix asked me something. They ended up not playing it, and I answered it just like that without even thinking about it. They asked me this question is, hey, how come Pablo had as many passports and airplanes as you or more? Gotcha had as many. Chapo had as many. Sound Willie, how come they all couldn't quit and you did? I said, because I never saw myself as a drug lord. I saw myself as a businessman. And that was just one other business we handle. And when that business was no longer the business I got involved at the beginning. See, you've been around a long time. Think about it. We're going back 76, 77. There was no stigma about cocaine.
Right.
If you threw a party and there wasn't a crystal bowl of cocaine there,
Wasn't a big deal.
and with us, we never used it, right? So most of our clients were the celebrities. Sammy Davis Jr., all the Hollywood celebrities. We're taking 500-600 kilos a month to California in 1977.
And how'd you get your clientele and all that off top? Like,
Because you meet you.
or you just started going to parties? Or how'd you open up?
No, actually, I started with one guy. The guy that's doing the refrigeration for the ship is telling me, hey, I know this boat is for, because he knew it was from Colombia, on the whole thing, because I have no idea this boat is going to be for freaking bringing in Coke. He's like, hey, I know this boat is for Coke. I'm like, no, man, you're out of your mind. I said, you think I'd be on top of this boat if this was something illegal? And so I was living out there in Stockton for 6 months. And he and I became really, really good friends, right? I used to play baseball when I was young. And he had a softball team, and I played in his softball team. And we go to his house for barbecue. I mean, I'm living, literally, he's out there every day on the boat. And when I find out, he's always asking me, come on, man, hook me up. And I'm like, dude, I really don't know anything about what you're talking about. This is all legit. So I'm trying to get rid of this guy. I go to Colombia, and when my godfather says this to me, right, first of all, he's going to give me, it's basically my whole responsibility. Originally in Miami was, the load came in from those people. I take it, I stashed it, and I distributed it to whoever he wanted me to, right? Whoever his client. At that time, we were talking about 50 to 75 kilos. So when I find out all that out, and I find out what it called, I want to get rid of this guy. So I went up to him and I said, hey, let's say his name is Dave. I said, Dave, yeah, man, we're drug dealers. I want to come clean with you. You and I are cool. We're friends. He's like, I knew it. How much? I knew that my godfather was selling in Miami for 46 to 48. I'm saying, man, it's 70,000. He said, man, that's how I say, yeah, but this is straight from the tree. He's like, all right, let me get back to you. Next thing you know, he has this friend that wants 30 kilos that's selling to a lot of celebrities.
70,000 a pop?
70,000 a pop. We're selling 600 kilos, 70,000 a pop. It was costing us 23 in Colombia. So what happened? That guy, we start bringing in, he starts growing, and we're delivering.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then in Miami, you begin to create a structure like everything else. So I need a stash house. So I start thinking, okay, my first stash house in Miami was right across the police station from Miami Police Department. Why? Because the most obvious is the least obvious.
Yeah, you're taking a good chance right there.
Hey, Dame, I'm fighting.
Everything's hitting them, please.
I'm fighting with the cops to freaking don't park your stupid ass car in my driveway
With a bunch of,
with 500 kilos inside.
that's crazy.
So then how do we begin to create stash houses? Well, I find me a house where there was at least one police officer living in that block. And then we had companies. So one of the companies we had was a pool cleaning company. And then we had a whole fleet of El Caminos. Remember the El Caminos?
Of course, I love
All right.
El Camino.
Well, do you know that inside, each
You had a
side of
fleet
those
of
El
El
Caminos all the way
Caminos?
to the back, You can put 50 kilos on each side.
So you had a fleet of El Caminos with 50 cakes in
We
the
were,
side?
we were delivering 500-600 kilos in front of the cops in Miami.
And El Caminos.
El Caminos.
That's fly.
So,
I mean,
listen, we had Dame, I had them set up. You know, there was 2 hollows, right? Like tubes that go in the fence all the way to the back. We had it set up that you take a quarter, you put the radio on a certain radio station, and there was 2 little pins underneath the radio. Nobody said, you take a quarter and press against those pins, and an arm would shoot all that coke out there. I could empty that out in 2 minutes. Seal it, bring me dogs, bring me whatever. Then the guy that do my delivery, I would set him up with a company, and I make sure that he left his house at 7 o'clock, like every businessman, and come home at 5 or 6. And if we weren't delivering that week, I told him just go to the freaking park and feed the pigeons. And make sure that you become friends with the cop.
So was it known that you were the man in Miami?
Well, among the group that we were, yeah.
But I mean, when you're outside, like, so then...
Well, what happened is my attorney, who later on was the guy that ratted me out, I start going to the Mutiny Hotel with him. You know, there's all kinds of stories about the Mutiny. You see it in Griselda. It's all bullshit. I have my own table at the Mutiny. I started going to the Mutiny in 1977.
Do they reference you in Griselda?
No, not in Griselda. See, this is the funny thing. Why don't they reference Pablo except to say the only man that Pablo feared was a woman named Griselda? Dude, listen to me carefully. Pablo did not fear the freaking devil. He brought a government to his feet.
I don't think when they made that movie they meant to tell the truth. I think they meant to tell a soap opera-ish kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's based on, like, inspired by. But, you know, when I watch Cocaine Cowboys and I hear about things, you know, I just feel like when you make a character, you have to have empathy for the character, and they try to make a likable character. But I don't think they were trying to tell the truth. I don't think that was their intent. And
No,
I don't think they're even going to pretend. I don't think they would even pretend they're trying to tell the truth.
First of all, is how can any of those stories tell the truth when there's only 5 of us alive from that era?
Right.
We were thousands, and we got wiped out. So how do they tell the truth?
Unless they talk directly to the source.
So has anyone ever talked, except for me, to my godfather who founded everything? No, never. He would never talk to anybody.
Well, this is why I'm talking to you.
Right.
I know that you're going to be able to tell the truth, but also,
But
I don't know that many people could withstand 27 days of torture, and that they know that, you know, that life comes with torture and pain, you know, from someone that, because most people from the hip hop culture, like in every record there's Pablo, and we're all been infatuated with all of that stuff. But again, number one, I always would wonder, after $1 billion, why not quit? And number two,
I give you that answer, though.
It's not sustainable. You know what
I
I mean?
can give you the answer why not quit, because that's part of the answer I gave them.
What was it?
When I said, I didn't consider myself a drug lord. I was a
Right.
businessman.
No, I know
said,
why you quit,
I
but
said,
why
but-
don't they quit? Like, why don't
Because-
people quit once they have $1 billion?
Because what other identity does Pablo, Sal, Willie, El Chapo have besides being a drug lord? Who is Sal Magluta or who is Pablo Escobar in Cody, Wyoming?
If I have $1 billion, tax-free, in Colombia
You
in
be
the
gone.
70s, I don't need anyone to identify. I'll be like, I'm the guy
Exactly.
with the nice house on the beach, eating the best food.
But see, you think differently.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
they didn't. This was their whole world.
It's like it's like dopamine.
Well, it is that whole lifestyle, that dope, that, hey, you know, I'm Pablo Escobar, I'm going down the road, and everybody knows that after 6 o'clock, you better not be on the street. And everybody knows that if you're a cop and you look at me in my eyes, you're dead. I mean, how does he go to Cody, Wyoming and live in a farm and just enjoy life or do what I do now? They can't.
Well,
I get it. I've seen them. Their mentality is, well, when I joined, when I finally joined, they said, look, there's 3 outs. There's 3 roads for you here. You're going to make money you never imagined. You're going to have power you never imagined. You will. The other roads is, you're going to go to jail for the rest of your life or you're going to die. It's that simple. But for me, I was blessed enough to realize, you know, number one, I'm a Christian. Number 2, And I'm not that one that sees Jesus and all that everywhere. I'm not that type. I believe that you help yourself and then God will help you. And whoever God to you is, that's good for me. But I always believed when I saw in 1987 that now there was violence. When we started, we didn't have to. There was no violence at all.
So you didn't have to have a
No,
headquarters.
we'd go to the bank with $1 million.
It was like
double
weed.
back.
It was like how weed was in the beginning.
Exactly. It was how it was.
Right,
Because actually, if you know, that's the same people that transitioned from one to the other. And they were all good people, right? They were all just good old trying to make a buck. So, including that us in the cartel, my godfather.
So you kind of got away from it before it got ugly.
When I came out, it was starting to get ugly. So now I realize in '87, I got to walk around with 10 bodyguards with Uzi machine guns.
Oh, so
that ain't me.
You did go through that for a
Yeah,
little
I
while.
went through that for 2 years. But see, then I had a mother that kept saying, son, what you're doing doesn't please God. I didn't believe in it. I was an atheist, hardcore atheist all my life. But, it was like, hey, this is the life I chose. But there was two things happening in my life. There was something, I believe the most powerful prayers are the mother. My mother was, then you see, my mother, it has the best tough love I ever know. My mother was, what you're doing doesn't please God, what you become is horrific, and then she's like, hey, son, what do you want to eat today? She always taught me what true north was, where I could always come back. And eventually what ended up happening was really an encounter with my little daughter. She was the love of my life. And one weekend, whenever I had her for a week, and the mom would have her for 2 weeks, and I would have her for a week. And whenever I had her, I didn't have no women, I didn't have nobody around me, right? I gave my whole life to her. And I had just taken her back.
Wait, Paul. Are you gonna go with her?
I'm going to pick up stuff for her science.
Okay. Be careful, Rock. Love you.
So I had just taken her back to the mother. And that Saturday, I was partying with a bunch of Hollywood celebrities. I lived 15,000 square foot home. And in the middle of the night, my head of security calls and says, hey, you won't believe this. Your wife just dropped your daughter here. She's like 2 years old. And I'm like, it was like shocking to me. It was like, so I had it brought to the house. I called the nanny that lived with us. And I'm like, look, take care of her until the morning, put her to bed, she was asleep, and then in the morning I'll have breakfast with her. And I went back to my party. In the middle of the night, she got out of the room and started knocking. Daddy, it's Crystal. Damn, I would have given anyone $1 million back then if anyone could get that close to me during that period. And Daddy, it's Crystal. And it was the first time in my life that I felt filthy, dirty, and a guy that people said eyes ran through my veins. I chased all the women out the window. I said, get out of here. Got them all out the window. Went into the shower, and I felt filthy and dirty. I never felt filthy or dirty about anything. I could see a guy being cut into pieces and didn't give a shit. I'm like, hey, you're breathing good air. And, I started to scrub the filth. I mean, when I went into my bed, it was the first time I started to shake and shiver. And here's my baby. You know how you feel about your son. And I'm like, this is the only thing in my life that's sacred. And if I open the door, I'm going to contaminate her. And at that moment in time, when I went back to bed, and then when I felt that she had already left or gone back to her room because I didn't hear her knock anymore, I went out to get water, and she was in the floor in a fetal position crying. And I said, my life is going to change today. It was like seeing your child that you adore drowning, and you're trying to touch his finger as they go underneath the water. And here's really something critical. I'm about to make a phone call that guarantees me that I'm going to live 2 to 3 months. And that's how anguished I was inside of me, that turmoil. I'm making millions. I got millions. I live a life. I got jets. I got houses. I got mansions. I got cars. I got prestige. I got power. And I'm ready to give it all up for this child, to save this child. And, we didn't have a very good retirement program in the cartel. Because the biggest thing with the cartel was they could deal with anything except the unknown. If they say right now, hey, Dave is going to tell them XYZ, they didn't give a damn because they feel like, hey, until you get in front of that 12, we don't care. And what, you're going to tell them our name? They know our name. But the question for them was, why is George quitting? There's no indictments. There's no investigation going on. We're paying $50 million, $10 million a month in bribery. We know everything that was going on in the whole country. Why is he quitting? He's not doing anything. I'm not even seeing the coke anymore. He's got a guy who's, since I came out of prison, I got this guy that was my right-hand guy. I gave him half the profit, and he handled everything. All I ever did, Dane, at that time, send it, don't send it. And I would pay off the big political figures that were direct contacts of mine. And I was willing to die. I didn't care because I was literally walking dead. And
So you just walked away one day and said,
I
I'm
moved.
done.
I thought the sun would rise and fall in Miami. And in the 70s, man, not much happened in Miami that I did not authorize. And I'm going to tell you something. I left Miami. I lived in a gorgeous home. You know, I just got on Facebook, I got a note from this little African-American young kid 40 years ago. He said, Mr. Valdez, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to wash your cars at the Hermitage. The Hermitage in Coconut was one of the most exclusive. He said, you always told me, son, work hard, be honest, and don't work for no one and you're going to get rich. He said, I want you to tell you that your advice led me to become captain of the fire department, and I'm retiring in 2 weeks. I never forget the words you... That was 40 years ago.
So you went from Miami to where?
To my ranch, which was in Cruiston by Lake Okeechobee, about 90 miles from Miami. Didn't go back to Miami, not once, for 3 years.
Just went to the ranch. And you started from scratch.
Went to a ranch. Well, I mean, I was worth millions, right? So I'm living... I hired this guy to come teach me karate. And, because, I mean, I couldn't go out, right? I'm thinking that I made provisions to try to eliminate people wanting to kill me, right? So I had this guy to come teach me, and the first day he says, hey, man, I'm going to teach you about the sword. And I'm like, man, I'm a smart guy. I love weapons, man. You know, I picked the bag. He's going to bring out this sword, but I'm like, where the hell is the sword, man? I didn't see a sword coming in. I said, well, maybe he's got some Japanese remote control. So, you know, compact. He's going to press a button and pop out. He turns around with a Bible. Man, I got so angry. I was so pissed. I'm like, dude, let me tell you something. I don't believe in that freaking book or what that book says. I'm paying you a lot of money to teach me karate. Tomorrow, you take that sword home and bring the real sword. The first man that got this close to me looked at me and says, young man, what I got, you got no money to pay. And I said to myself, shit, man, this guy's 7th-degree black belt. I reached behind me. I don't have my gun or none of my boys. This guy's going to whoop Jesus into me, and I'm going to pay for the shit now. Don't get excited, man. Don't get excited. I'll make you this deal. We go through 2 hours of karate, and while the steam room is heating up, waste your time. You know, do whatever you got to do. And he kept coming back every day for 3 years. And one day, see, and the funny thing was, I would look at this dude, right? Here I am living in this gorgeous home. I mean, my guest house was 4,000 square feet. Tell me how happy he is. Little 1,000 square foot house. Married to the same woman 40 years. I mean, 20 years, she's 40 some odd years old. I'm like, it's out of his mind, man. I'm going to bed with supermodels every day. And I hate every one of them. And he's like, I'm like, dude, why are you so happy? You got nothing to be happy about. I mean, that's how bad I was. And he's like, man, he says, you know, all he would say is this, I have an intimate relationship with Jesus. And I'm like, man, you're out of your mind. Intimate relationship with a ghost? I'm surrounded by people I don't have no intimate relationship with. What are you talking about?
I get it. You got to know how you love yourself before you can love anything else, really.
Yeah. And I was living the Playboy life. I had a house in Vail. I don't have to worry about being arrested anymore. I'm not doing nothing. I have a house in Vail. I have a gorgeous home on the ocean in Fort Myers Beach. I lived in a multi-million-dollar ranch. I'm making over $1 million a year breeding quarter horses. I got the #1 stud in the world. I'm living the life. I'm a young kid, 30-some years old. So I got millions of dollars. I'm never going to
So did you start winding that down? Like, what happened?
No. What happened was I started making all my illegal money legal. Because I'm living now legitimate life. I got my jet, is legal. You know, I had a hawker at that time. You know, my ranch, everything's legal. 3 years later, 1990, September, I'm at a horse show. DEA comes and arrests me. I thought they were arresting me because I was having a relationship with this girl that her father hated me. And he was a big shot. And they take me to Mobile, Alabama. Never been there in my life. When I go to Mobile, Alabama, my attorney comes and says to me, don't worry about it. We're going to walk. I'm like, really? And he's like, I'm like, how do you figure that out? He said, well, here's what they got you on. They're charging you this guy, Dickie Lane, who was my partner, right? When he and I were in prison together, when I came out, he's the one that brought all those loads for me. Hell of a guy. He said, this one guy, this pilot, put away 160 people. And now he's telling them that he took Dickie to the Tamiami Airport in Miami. You picked him up at 10 o'clock in the morning. He came back at night with a suitcase with $3 million and went up to the pilot and said, look what George paid me. That shit don't happen like that, right? And he's like, and it wasn't you that took him, somebody else did. I said, well, Alan, I did 5 years for less than that in a foreign country. And he's like, yeah, but there's better news. Well, I said, what is that? He says, the main witness against you just killed himself last night. While he was a government witness, he was smuggling cocaine for himself inside a DEA airplane. You see American-made, those airplanes?
Yeah.
Most of those were ours.
Oh, okay. So you knew Barry?
No, I didn't know Barry. I didn't know him at all. We didn't even deal with him. This guy, Licky Lynn, was our connection, right? So he was bringing him in. He would have a helicopter go to the oil fields, right, with the same tail number as the airplane, right? And they're thinking that he's going in there to pick up, workers from the oil fields outside of Louisiana. And in reality, the airplane would come in at that same altitude. And they would think it was the helicopter just coming back. And the helicopter would just go low so radars couldn't pick him up. Anyway, brought in 38, 40 loads. As a matter of fact, one day for my birthday, we brought in 3 loads, 2 hours apart. For my birthday, I wanted to celebrate that day. 2,400 kilos. Made, I don't know, $4 million that day. And I go and I'm like, I said, Alan, here's the deal, man. Here you are, a good guy, Jewish guy. I said, here you're a good Jewish guy that I've known all my life. I hired him out of law school. Great lawyer. I was paying him $100,000 a month retainer. And his office, he had a conference room called the house that Valdes built. And I said, and you tell me I'm going home. But I given my life to this other Jew, ain't telling me nothing. I don't even know if he's real or not. But here's the deal, man. I can't keep fighting these people. I'm tired of fighting. See, now statute of limitation ran out on everyone, so I knew they were not going to ask me to testify against anyone because statute of limitation ran out. And they had already everybody in jail that I didn't even know. All I knew was their boss. I said, what do they want? He said, well, let's see. So we walk in there with Jeff Sessions. You heard the name? He became Trump's attorney general. And with me, it was straight up, man. He's like, little money, lots of time. Lots of money, little time. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, we want all your money. And where I got lucky was, it was at a period in the U.S. where U.S. attorney's office were being graded by how much money they seized. So I looked at him, at the prosecutor, and I'm like, you know how much money I got? And they're like, no, but we know who does. Walked out, opened the door, in came a DEA, FBI, IRS, and Customs. They knew how much toilet paper I've been using for the last 4 years.
Damn.
They said, we want it all. I said, how much is all? He said, $60 million. We want your underwear so we can burn them. And this was 1990. I was 34. And I called my dad. And I said to my dad, Dad, they want every bit of it. And my dad is like, son, until you detach yourself from that money, you will always be slave to that money. I said, Dad, I'm going to go back to jail and come out dead broke at 34. Going in at 34. He's like, it don't matter. You'll make it again. I tell people, you know how long it takes to go from being a multimillionaire to not have a dollar for a candy bar? About 24 minutes of signing away.
Right then and there, you gave them everything.
Everything.
And they knew where everything was at.
Oh my God. They had already taken over the ranch. They had come in at 4 o'clock in the morning. You thought they were invading Iraq. How many helicopters landed on that ranch? My girlfriend was living with me there at that time. They took her naked and put her inside a horse stall. Put everybody in horse stalls.
Damn.
And the marshal, them freaking bastards, stole like about $300,000 worth of jewelry, man.
And then reported.
No. So all I asked him was, or my attorney asked, he said, look, he'll plead guilty, hand you everything. You can't take none of it because that should run out. But all we want to do is plead guilty to a violation of parole. See, I was on 10 years parole, right? I already done, you get 15 years, done 5. I've been out 3 years, so I still had 7 more parole. Said, well,
wouldn't you have beat the case?
well, would I? I thought I beat the first one. I had the best attorneys in the country
Right,
saying that I had a constitutional right to venue. I had the dean of the law school, Harvard.
Right, but were the feds presenting that they had you boxed in a way that you,
They wanted to charge me with 7 life sentences.
for what? For
Okay.
picking your man up?
So, you know the continued criminal enterprise, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's real simple. So, for example, you and I deal, and you retire, 20 years. I keep going. I get busted. They come back and get you. Didn't matter you walked away 20 years.
Oh, I get it.
It's
I
set
just-
up in a way.
I'm just wondering, was it a case that you think you could have beat based on what you saw?
You know, according to my attorney, I could have beaten him because there's no witness. But you know what, though, Dame? I was tired of fighting these people. You can't beat these people.
Right.
You might win. Look, when Sal won that case in Miami, bribing the jurors and all that Cocaine Cowboy,
Right.
he came to my mother's house, right? Because his mother, his parents, and my parents were best friends for 50 years. He sat there in my bed that I had in my bedroom that I had in that house. I said, man, give it all to them. They had been dealing, you'll see it in episode 5, right? They have been offering the government $50 million and like 10,000 kilos and turning in a bunch of people. I said, look, you beat them. I thought they beat them. I never imagined they had ever bribed any jurors or any of that, right? I thought they beat them fair and square. Their defense was my defense. Hey, when Jorge Valdez, yeah, he got us started, and when he retired, we retired. So yeah, we made all money dealing drugs.
So they told on you?
No, they didn't talk, but their defense was that, no, the government knew that I got him started, right? As a matter of fact, here's the interesting thing. Both the government and them called me as witness for them, right? When you plead guilty and you do a proffer, right? Which you got to wipe everything out, even statute ran out and everything. I couldn't hurt them none because in reality, all I could say, well, yeah, I got him started. Everybody knew that, right? But they wanted that. They wanted me to say that because their defense was, hey, yeah, we started, George got us started, but we walked away. So yeah, we made all our money, didn't do, but statute has run out. That was their defense. I gave him my attorney, the representative, Marty Weinberg, the best drug attorney. When he went to represent me in 1979, he asked me $50,000 just to tell me whether he would take my case or not. He was the best drug lawyer in the world. Anyway, long story is, so, you know, had all this stuff legit already. So could I have beaten him? I really didn't care. I didn't want to try it anymore. I said to Sal, I said, look, I said, Sal, you won. All you got to do now is say, listen, man, I'll take a plea, 10 years, 15, whatever. I'll give you what I told you I was going to give you, and I'm out. And you'll be out, like Willie did. Willie was smart enough to take a 20-year plea. He looked at me in the eye and says, I fucked him once, I'm going to fuck him again. I'm like, I'm primo, cousin. You're not. You won a little battle. They're going to win this freaking war. Look at the poor guy now dying.
What made you pass them the plug?
In a penitentiary. Because they were working for me, right? At the end. He and I grew up together since we were little kids. See, my father, his father, 3 of them, every day in Miami, they all came from Cuba and they all moved within 10 blocks of each other. And every day in Miami, after dinner, each one would go to the other's So one day his father would come to my house for coffee with the other friend, Oscar. Next day they would go to his house, and they did that for years till they died. So Sal was always wanting me to give him a hand, right? And I thought in Cocaine Cowboys, I had a deal. I had 30 kilos I had to distribute, right? And when he came to me the first time, and I was the only reason that I even gave him an appointment at that time because we had separated. I went to University of Miami. He dropped out of school. He was selling grams of discos. So, but he kept telling my dad every time my dad went to his house for coffee, hey, tell George to help me out. Because my dad would be bragging, oh, George is all over the world. He's in Switzerland. He's in Colombia. He's here. He's got businesses everywhere. Yeah, like a father, right? And but he put 2 and 2 together. George ain't freaking making $1 million selling bananas. So finally, I give him an appointment. He comes up to me and I'm like, bro, stop asking my father. He doesn't know anything. He's like, come on, give me a chance. I said, Sal, how much money you got? He says, I can put up about 20 grand. I said, dude, that don't even buy a kilo, man. We don't sell ounces. We're bringing in hundreds of kilos. Let me see what I can do for you. And then 2 months later, we're supposed to deliver 30 kilos to this one guy, one of my godfather's buyers. And the guy ended up being busted and becoming a snitch, so we didn't deliver it. But I was headed to Europe. I had just bought a brand new Mercedes 450. That time I think they were 350, 380, convertible, silver, red interior. And I was going to pick it up in Germany with my ex-wife. We're going to spend a month going through Europe in the car. And so I called him up. I said, man, you want to get started? This is 78. And he's like, yeah. I said, I got 30 kilos for you.
Got extra 30 there.
And he's like, oh, no, that's too much. Willie said, yeah, oh, yeah, we can do it. And I gave it to him. I said, look, the best thing is you got a month to pay me. Because I went to the guy who owned the Coke, and I'm like, look, my guys almost got busted. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. You either pay me the $7,000 per kilo that I was charging to bring those 30 kilos. You got 1 day, or I'm going to drop this shit. I'm going to take enough to collect my $210,000 at Colombian price. I'm going to drop the rest of the shit at Daily Mall.
What's Daily Mall?
It's just a mall in Miami.
Oh, at the mall. Right.
And where all the Colombians used to go. So I'm like, he's like, no, man, please help me out. I said, look, the best I can do for you is give you back what you paid in Colombia, what it cost you. $23,000 a kilo, you know, it's a hell of a lot. You're talking about almost $700,000, better than nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So I called Sal. I mean, the $7,000 was my profit. It cost me $3,000 to bring it in. I'm making $4,000. So I called him. I said, hey, you can have him at 42. And they sold him from there, and I started giving him to him. So when I got busted, I thinking I'm going to get out. 79, I got busted in September. In April, I thinking I'm going to get out. But when I realized in 80, I'm going to trial and I'm not getting out, then someone's got to run it. I can't run it from prison. Right. You know, it was just too, you know, all this thing about people run operation from prison, I guess, whatever. I couldn't figure out a way because what I was doing was just too involved. Right. So I handed it to him. And the deal was, they're like, all right, we'll give you 1/3 of all our profit. I said, no, don't give me 1/3 of your profits. You know, you're going to give me 1/3. You're going to be out here busting your ass. One day you're going to say, why should we give George any money? We're risking our life, and he's in prison having a hell of a good time. I said, so here's the deal.
But you said when they came home, they didn't drop.
Well, here's the thing. I said, here's enough, $250,000 to buy me 10 kilos. I said, all I want you to do is bring the 10 kilos, sell them, and save me the profit. On all the loads you're going to bring in through the connections, I'm going to tell you who's going to give it to you. I'm going to tell you what airstrip you're going to land. I'm going to tell you what police, sheriff is going to pick it up and deliver it to you in Miami. I'm going to give you the whole keys to the kingdom in a platter. And do that for me. When I came out, you know how much they gave me?
I saw the, yeah.
Zero.
Did you have a conversation with him? Like, yo, what's up with my bread?
Yeah, you know what? Damn, think about it. He and I were so close. He was like my own blood. We grew up in a cradle together. That's how close we were for years. It was so painful for me that I looked at him in the eyes and I said, you sure? He said, look, man, we ain't got no money. We're retired. And I'm like, all right, thanks. And walked.
Yeah, I've been in similar situations, trust me.
But you know what happened? They saved my life. Because had they done the honorable thing,
Could be in the game.
I'd be in the game with them. And they ended up killing people and doing all kinds of crap that I would never have been part of.
So, you were telling me this story about when the people that wanted to make sure that you didn't say anything when Noriega was torturing you, and you were saying that they went to the people and tortured the people that tortured you to make sure you didn't say anything?
Yeah, and it really got me upset. So what happened is one day I come to my father's house, or my father gives me a call because I was in prison, and he's like crying. I never told my parents what happened in Panama, right? Why? What purpose is worrying two old people that your son almost got killed? And I said, why are you crying, Dad? He's like, you know, such and such brought this man, Panamanian, to the house to tell me how proud I should be of you because he was part of the tortures and you did not even give him your name. Man, my first reaction was so angry. I called that one guy that did that. I said, the day I get out of prison, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you because you didn't have to tell that to my parents. I said, I understand you doing that. I understand you going to Panama, finding the torture because I'm a 23-year-old kid. I would have done the same thing in your behalf.
So they were looking for the guys that tortured you to make sure you didn't say anything.
Not only they found him, they brought him to Miami to talk to my father and to tell my father he should be proud of me.
They brought the guy that tortured
one guy,
you
one of them,
to your father.
to tell him that he should be proud of me.
Wow. What did they do with the guy that tortured you?
I got no clue.
And that's incredible. And so they were so thorough about it, the people you were with, that they actually went to the people that tortured you to make sure you didn't say anything.
Yeah, because they were convinced. I mean, even though they should have known, because if I had talked, I wouldn't be going to trial in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be someplace in a government witness protection program or something. Mm-hmm. So they should have thought, but still, they want to leave no stone unturned. And they had the power, so they found out, hey, I want to know who's been torturing that guy.
Did you ever have to deal with Griselda at all?
Never.
Never.
You know what's so funny about it? I enjoyed Narcos, the first series, because I knew Pablo and I know that, and even though half of it is all lies, right? A lot of the facts are because of events that came out publicly about blowing the airplane and all that. But here's the interesting thing. I had never heard of her in my life. Now, her son is going around. I understand. You want to make money. This whole subject is popular. I first found out about her when I got out of prison, 1995. Never heard of her. But, you know, I asked a couple questions. Because, you know, the thing about it is, I understand Netflix, you know, making her big, you know, this big old thing and all that. Fine. You know, it's entertainment, right? Can't blame them. That's their business. But the son, when Sofia Vergara decided to do that, I am a big fan of Sofia Vergara. I love that. I think she's a great actress, Hispanic. I'm going to root for every Hispanic. But I have a Colombian wife from Medellin, and I got 2 kids that are half Colombian. And when they start to grandeur, elate this person that was actually become famous for only one reason, killing people, killing her husband, who was the scum of the earth. I know people now that work for her. I know a friend that I talked to not too long ago, did 38 years at Angola, the prison. You know what he said to me?
Angola for her?
No, for something else. He killed somebody in Louisiana. You know what he said to me? He said she was so messed up, smoking freebase at the end, that we were supposed to blow up this house with a pressure cooker, dynamite inside a pressure cooker. She gave us the wrong address, and we actually blew up a stash house instead of the people we're going to kill.
Oh, man.
But, none to say, I don't want, when people look at my wife and my kids, to think that every Colombian is a drug dealer. Every Colombian is a whore. Every Colombian is a murderer, because they're not. Those are great people just because a little group of people. Look, elate Pablo. He's become a myth. But when you try to make this person that wasn't what they said she was, and then build up upon her murder. I mean, my God, it's like she's coming to Miami to sell a kilo for $25,000 when in Colombia at that time was costing that much in '78, and she takes over the Ochoas. I mean, I mean, this is the worst Netflix I've seen. Come close to it.
It's probably
But-
because it's the most
Right.
that you know the most
But she's
about.
become like a mythic lady. And look, and I don't blame the son for wanting to make, I don't blame any human being that wants to make money legit, right? But don't brag. I don't want my kids to brag about me ever. What I did was, I was a horrendous human being. I was a scum of the earth. Don't brag about me. Brag about the change in my life. How do you know so much about your mother when you were just a kid? Who told you? But here's the questions I have. Google, Medellin cartel. Thousands of hits you'll get. Pablo, Gacha, Leather Ochoa. Constantly, right? Those were the people in the Colombian Medellin. How come they never mention her name? Not once. But number two, the big question I have is this. You know people in prison. You come from the streets. What are the chances the DEA would ever give him Pablo 20 years and let him out in 5? If she's more powerful than Pablo. How do you get out in 5 after doing 20? After getting 20? And you get 20 because your hitman, who's your snitch, that was true, ends up having phone sex, supposedly with the prosecutor's secretary, and that's the only government case against you. So they let you plead to those 3 murders to 3 counts of manslaughter, and you get 3 concurrent 20-year sentences. So here you are. You know what the average person sentence would get to prison for what Sal Magluta got convicted of? You, me, anybody? 7, 8 years? Why'd they give him 160, 180 years? You think they charge him because of the bad checks? Dame, he didn't get convicted of the murders. He got convicted of giving checks to attorney he wasn't supposed to. You know why? Because these people don't play fair, man. They got all the cards to win and you got all the cards to lose. If I call you to be a witness in my case, right? Hey, Dane, you know that I'm innocent. And you say, George, I'm going to go. I want to be a witness for you. I ain't got no money. Dame, I'll send you a ticket. I can't send you a ticket. That's obstruction of justice. Now the DA comes to you and says, Dame, I want you to talk with George. You say, I want $1 million. They'll give you $1 million. That's illegal. How the fuck are you going to win like that? You know? So how do you get out? Oh, you had a great attorney? You were sick? Well, you know, I was in prison. I saw a lot of, my co-defendant, Harold, that guy, he died at Atlanta Penitentiary with cancer, sick. You know how many people, oh man, I saw die in penitentiary, sick? DA don't give a damn that you're sick. You know? So those just little questions. But anyway, look, to each his own. My pain is not with him. I don't know the kid. He might be a really nice guy.
You don't want people
My
to
pain is I don't want
generalize
people to
your
think that my
culture.
wife and everyone related to my wife and everyone from Colombia is a murderer, a whore, and a drug dealer. That's just my own take.
No, I could dig it. You know, I'm sure, homie, to be a kid around that must be really traumatized as an adult.
Especially seeing 3 of your brothers die.
Yeah. So.
And
you
your
know,
mother died.
That's what I be seeing. When I see it, I be like, that must have been a rough childhood. So, one more question. If you want to talk about it, it's a quick story, just because when you tell certain stories, I be like, that's a crazy story. You were telling me this story about, if you want to, I don't know, about the time we first met, and you told me when we first talked, you said, I like the way you do things because, you know, when there's a problem, you want to talk it out, because I had a problem with a couple of my constituents, and I was like, yo, let's just have a conversation. And you were like, yeah, man, when Pablo put a hit on me, I just called him. You remember that story you told me about that?
So what happened, going back,
So Pablo put a hit on you.
Pablo, I'm going to give you the proceeding to that.
Okay.
So Pablo calls me up one day and says, hey, George, I'm going to start offering insurance. I'm like, what are you talking about insurance? He said, you know how we're going to charge, we charge people $7,000 a kilo to bring in their dope, but there's a risk that it could be lost. I said, yeah, but we never lost one. He said, well, I'm going to start charging 10 to 12,000. And if it gets lost, I'm going to give them their coke back in Colombia. I'm like, what do you want to do that for? We've never lost one. He said, yeah, but every third load, I'm going to tell him it got lost. I'm like, what? Every third load, I'm going to tell him it got lost. I'm going to give him the kilos back in Colombia, no harm. And now we got 200, 300, 400 kilos in Miami at Colombian price without putting up $1. We're going to make a ton of money. I thought about it for a minute. I said, I can't participate in that, man. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, it's a lie. And if I participate in this lie with you, when is someone going to come and tell you a lie? And you think that George will do that? I said, nobody knows me. None of you people. Sell all the insurance you want. Keep all the profits. Done. Year goes by. We were some of the people that brought the first load from Colombia to Mexico. So we bring in a load, 800 kilo. We borrow an airplane, a Mitsubishi 200 from Jorge Ochoa, from the Ochoas. And we bring this load, and when it's about to land at the airport, there's a whole operation going. But see, everything I did in my life, I was always very proactive. You know, I always looked at, okay, I analyze things, I'm very analytical. Where's my weak points? And eliminate them. So for example, and I'll get to this, where's a weak point in a pilot going to Colombia to pick up a load and come to the United States? Well, the plane could be bugged. Mm-hmm. What if the pilot gets to Colombia and there's a military operation? Where's he going to go?
Trust me.
On and on. So you know what? How I prevented that? I had Colombia send me a pilot. Mm. Then the pilot that was going with him had no idea where they were going in Colombia. Mm. All he knew was that he was going to bring the plane back. So we carry with the same mindset into Mexico, and we go and land in an airstrip outside of Houston, right? That part of Mexico. Bring in the load, everything fine. 3 months later, this guy, who now works for Pablo, but used to work for another one of my associates, and I did him a huge favor, a guy named Victor back then, big favor. When Pablo killed his boss, I took his son and lived with me in my house in Miami. Mm. He was a little kid, would have gotten killed immediately, because if Pablo killed you, he's going to kill all your boys. So,
meaning like your children? And
your children, your brothers, any male related to you is gone.
So if Pablo killed you, he killing
every male related to you.
That was really going down.
That was going down for sure.
Really
so Victor comes to my house with this kid Nelson, and he's like, "Look, the only place you're gonna be safe in Miami is with you." Anyway, long story, the kid stayed with me. So Pablo killed his boss because his boss got drunk at a New Year's party and said, "Pablo's got all the fame, but I got all the money." Mm. Frank Jimenez. Called El Negro. No one's ever mentioned him. He was 10 times bigger than Pablo. But Pablo killed him.
For just saying that?
Just for saying that. Just for bragging about that. So Victor never forgot that. Well, now Victor's working for Pablo, and who does Pablo give the hit to? Because they find out that airstrip belonged to Pablo.
And he was mad because you took the kid and held the kid?
No. That airstrip was mad. So when they went to that guy and say, "Why did you have an airplane land in our airstrip that was not ours?" The guy said, "Oh, because Jorge Valdez told me that he asked you for it." And that was a lie. So Pablo's only reaction, and my godfather talks about it in my documentary, he says, look, his immediate reaction is just to kill you. He don't give a shit. That's his immediate impulse. Some people get mad and throw a punch or throw a bottle. Pablo's immediate impulse was just kill him. Victor comes and says, "I got really bad news. I need to talk to you."
Oh, that's the reason why he told you, because you saved his kids, your boss's
So yeah,
kids.
exactly.
Gotcha.
So I'm like, I'll meet you.
You're going to have to get back to that story in a second, but go ahead.
I said, "I'll meet you." Uh-huh. And I told him what mall to meet me. All my guys was, "Hey, you want us to go with you? You want to hide?" I'm like, I don't hide from anyone. I never done anything wrong. And I don't run from anybody. I'll go meet him. And he's like, "Look, I got a hit on you."
Pablo.
The Victor tells me, he says, "Pablo put a hit on you."
Right.
And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because of this, this, and that. And I know you. I know the type of man you are." This guy's a guy. This guy was one day at my house with his other cousin, and they were bragging about, "Hey, remember when we had the contest Let's walk by someone with a hat. We pick up the hat, shoot him in the head, and put the hat on him before he hits the ground. This guy was just a freaking hardcore murderer. I mean, like, look, not the type. And there's a lot of brave people in drive-by shootings, but when you're right next to that person, it becomes a different story, right? Anyway, long story. He told me, I said, let's call him. He said, you sure? I said, let's call him. So we called him. My godfather was on the phone. And I said, first of all, I didn't know it was yours. Had I known it was yours, I would have asked you for it. And I know you give it to me because I brought in over 20 loads for you. He said, but number two, you know I don't lie. He hung up the phone. That was the end of it.
This is like, just didn't say nothing?
I mean, we don't talk much through the satellite phones and stuff, you know.
Right.
And that was the end. A decision I made a year ago,
It's
a year
amazing how
earlier.
much it can get done if people just talk things out, right?
Yeah, because like the first principle my godfather said to me, you know what he said to me? He said, you're going to make so much money, and I'm going to give you two principles. He says, one of them, people are going to come and offer you all kinds of deal. So Dame Dash is going to come to you and say, hey, I got this great deal. If you give me 30 kilos, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to make this and all that. And then he says, you stop and you ask yourself two questions. How old is Dame? 45.
I'll take that.
Okay? No, I'm saying, the guy said,
Yeah.
if he's 45, then you ask yourself, has he done anything for himself? If he hasn't, he ain't going to do shit for you.
Trust me, I approach
So then
things,
if you like him,
I approach things the same way.
he said, if you like him, give him the money and said, if you ever come around me again with any proposition, how much you were going to make? 200,000? I like you so much, here's you 200,000. If you ever come again, I'm going to shoot you. He said, that's principle number one. Principle number two, if such and such comes to you and say, hey, I got this secret. I want to tell you this about Dame. I'm like, hold on. You tell him, hold on. Let me call Dame. Tell him in the face. If they say no, that they don't want to get into that, he says, you must do the following.
Chatty patty.
You must do the following. Shoot him in the kneecap.
Oh,
And say-
those are good principles.
And say, I'm not a whore. Don't make me participate. Get the fuck out of my place. And you know, everybody knew that I was a believer that he who brings gossip takes gossip. Everybody knew I didn't talk behind nobody's back. Everybody knew I didn't talk about no man. If I had to say something about any man, I'd say it to his face. If not, because what is the purpose?
Exactly.
To create division. And when you create division, what does that really achieve? You know? So, you know, I respect people. I want people to respect me. You know, I honor people. I want people to honor me. I never wanted to tell my story. Damn. I got out of prison. I earned a master's degree and then a PhD. I became one of 5 Hispanics in the country with a PhD in Bible. I was teaching, making $100,000 a year, teaching 2 classes a semester. I didn't want to ever tell my story. Back then, the big snitch had not been born. Google. All I wanted people was have a bunch of pretty girls beg me for an A. That's all I care about. But you know what happened? I had this ex-wife. They kept telling me, you don't do this, I'm going to tell your kids who you were. You don't do this, I'm going to tell such and such. You don't do that. One day, you know what I said? No, you won't. Because I'm going to tell the world who I am. I'm going to tell my kids that I was the scum of the earth. I'm going to tell my kids everything that I ever done in my life. And I wrote a book, became a bestseller, Coming Clean. That's what my principle, Coming Clean. Let it out. Here's who I am. Because you know what happens? See, we hold secrets. When we hold secrets, they keep us in bondage.
I already know. That's
But
why
when we don't hold secrets,
completely transparent.
when we don't hold secrets, when I tell you I'm the scum of the earth, see, we hold secret because we don't want to be judged. And we don't want to be judged because we feel that once we're judged, we're condemned. But if I'm come clean with you, you can't judge me. I came clean.